Alright people, what's going on? Welcome to Comics Expertise. Today I will be telling you all about Wolverine #1. Now, this is 72 pages and there's 2 stories in here. So both of them are written by Benjamin Percy. The first one I'll talk about is art by Adam Kubert, and the second one has art by Victor Bogdanovic. Alright, so as we get into this comic, Wolverine is playing hide and seek with some kids on Krakoa. Jeangrey comes around. She telekinetically removes Wolverine from some bushes, and they have a little moment. Wolverine just tells Jeangrey, "You never have to look too hard to find me, Jeannie. I'm always here for you." They look in each other's eyes, and I'm not digging it. This Cyclops' woman, stop it. But getting past that, Jeangrey tells Wolverine that Kitty Pryde is waiting for him. She has some whiskey for him, so they're drinking, they're having a conversation. And then Kitty Pryde brings Wolverine up to speed on the fact that their shipments of Krakoan flowers are short, like sometimes by pounds, sometimes a quarter of a shipment, and one time an entire ship full of Krakoan drugs, just whole shipment's gone. So from there we cut to a CIA agent at an FBI crime scene. He's remarking on the fact that a whole bunch of these drug dealers at this drug lab have apparently all killed themselves. And what was this drug lab producing? Something called pollen, an epidemic street level drug available worldwide that comes from one cartel, the flower cartel. So the CIA investigator, he's examining this pollen drug and he's like, this place, it smells like gardens and grandmas. It smells floral. It's like pollen. So to me that says the grandmas from X-Men #1 are somehow involved in this, but it might be a red herring. We'll find out in time. If it is though, I would love to see them wash up Wolverine, like just throw that gunk in his face, neutralize his powers, get him blind, and just stomp him out while he's on the ground. I would love to see that happen. But anyway, there's a white page here, and this page says this CIA agent, he's been investigating the source of this pollen and this flower cartel, and that the government is suspicious that this black market may have something to do with the Hellfire Trading Company, which we as the reader know to obviously be the case. So he's been ordered that if he finds that this black market for the Krakoan drugs has ties to the Hellfire Trading Company, to keep channels open so that the CIA can engage in espionage, subversion, sabotage, and possibly profit. So there you go. The CIA wants to profit off of drug dealers in this comic book, and possibly in real life. Who knows what they get up to. Now, the flower cartel, according to this white page, has arranged a meeting with the CIA in deep country Alaska. Now, I skipped over what I'm about to say, that it was in the beginning of the comic, but I'll get to it now. In the beginning of this comic, we see Wolverine in Alaska, and he's apparently killed Quentin Quire, Domino, and Jeangrey. He doesn't remember doing it. All he knows is that there's one set of footprints leaving from this massacre. He's lost and he has no choice but to follow said footprints. So we cut to 4 days before this massacre happens, and Wolverine is asking Sage to find a way to track the missing shipments of Krakoan drugs and to find where this pollen drug is coming from. Now, Sage gives them a location to check out, being Russia, and seeing as how the Russians are guarding all the gates, they get Gateway to make them a portal to where Sage indicated they should go. And here, as much as I don't want to see it or admit it or talk about it, I gotta say, we see Wolverine and Jeangrey holding hands, which, like I said, stop it. That's Cyclops' woman. But anyway, so before we check in with Wolverine's team going into Russia, we cut away to the CIA agent again, and he's visiting his daughter in the hospital, who I think they said has leukemia, so she's dying. And he mentions that his daughter is on the wait list for the Krakoan medicine that'll cure her, but people are stealing the shipments, and that's why she hasn't gotten her dose yet. So he has a personal stake in shutting down this cartel. Now, cutting away again to 3 days ago, as opposed to the 4 days ago that we just heard about, Wolverine's team teleports into some church of the Order of X, these mutant worshipping cultists. So these cultists, seeing the mutants pop right in on their ceremony, they're like, oh my god, look, we've been blessed. These mutants are here. Let's worship them. So Quentin Quire, he gives no fucks about his own safety. He just tries to body surf into the crowd like, wow, they love me. I'm their god. Oh, you have my permission to touch me? So while Quentin Quire is body surfing, all of these mutant worshipping cultists, they all take a hit of this drug, pollen. Then they start attempting to tear Quentin Quire apart and drink his blood like a bunch of fucking vampires, but more on that later. So as they engage these cultists, you see Gateway, Jeangrey, Domino, and Wolverine with Quentin Quire somewhere around here in the midst of all these cultists. And Wolverine's like, maim them, don't murder them unless they don't give you a choice. Which to me is just like, who are you telling this to? The only murder happy person here is you, but whatever. Now Quentin Quire has a badass line when he says, I'd prefer to be your god, but I'm happy to be your devil. And he just starts messing cultists up left and right with a psychic shotgun. Now all of these cultists actually start dying from drug overdoses from the pollen, and then we cut to 1 day ago. Wolverine has actually managed to track down where these cultists got the pollen from, and the cultists got it from some Russian mobsters. So Wolverine, climbing up the ladder, he asks the leader of these Russian mobsters, where'd you get the flowers? And the Russian mobster says at first, from her, from the Pale Woman. Now as soon as he said the Pale Woman, I was like, the White Queen? Emma Frost? So let me keep telling you what's going on. The Russian mobster says at first, she is the one we're dealing with at the flower cartel. She sells us the pollen, but only if we work for her. Takes 80%. This is a bad deal. So we steal petals from hospital in Sokovia, try to garden our own, and this does not make Pale Girl happy. She says we work with her or else. So Wolverine says, or else what? And the guy takes off his glasses, and you see one of his eyes is black with like a white streak in it. He says, she got into my head. She'd make me take out my lighter and cook my own eyeball in its socket. So this is red herring to make you think it's Emma Frost, but it's not, because even though it's telepath and they say the pale girl that they were dealing with was from the flower cartel. Now we cut to earlier today, and Wolverine is talking to Beast, and Beast is saying that there's a new drug war brewing, and it's because of the mutants and their drugs getting out into the world and being cut up and used with illegal narcotics. Now, even as Beast and Wolverine are talking, we see the CIA agent in Langley talking to his superiors, and he's saying the mutants run everything, so why not the black market as well? The only way to know for sure is to set up a meeting with this flower cartel, and this is where we cut back to Alaska at the current time, with Wolverine running around right after he had cut up Jeangrey, Domino, and Quentin Quire. And his memory is still fuzzy. He's like, why did I come here? What was I doing? And then he sees an illusion in the snow, and he says, her, the pale girl. And he pops his claws. And he's just screaming at this illusion, you made me do it. So right behind this illusion, we see the CIA agents coming in, and they're like, made you do what? What are you doing here? Who the hell are you? And we see Wolverine on the ground, and he's like, I've been wondering the same thing. And that's the end of this first story. This was enjoyable. I mean, there were some problems with the logic of Wolverine being able to kill 2 Omega level telepaths and Domino. That made no sense. Not to mention this CIA agent is investigating the mutants, so you would think that you would familiarize yourself with the most famous mutants. I don't buy that he walked up on Wolverine in Alaska with his claws out, and he's like, who are you? Like, damn, I don't much like Wolverine, but even I know that in universe, everybody and their grandmother knows who Wolverine is. You could probably go into space, go to the Brood homeworld, and ask some random Brood, who's Wolverine, and they would know. But anyway, on to the second story, also written by Benjamin Percy, with art this time by Victor Bogdanovic. You see Wolverine running around and training on Krakoa. He's thinking about how enemies are now allies, as we see Jean Grey talk to Magneto. We see Apocalypse, and we see a bunch of kids. And he's thinking about how times have changed, and how old enemies have changed. And he's at a Krakoan gate, and while he's at a Krakoan gate, out steps Omega Red, covered in blood. So even though they're supposed to be offering all evil mutants amnesty, Wolverine gives Omega Red 3 seconds to turn around and go back through the gate. He counts to 3, he goes to attack Omega Red, but Magneto just catches Wolverine in midair, and he throws Wolverine aside while he just says, Omega Red, of course you're welcome here. Sorry for the poor reception. So Magneto points out that most of the blood Omega Red is covered in is Omega Red's own blood. So he tells Wolverine, if you want to do your job and protect Krakoa, go find out what mess is waiting for us on the other side of this gate where Omega Red came from. And then he tosses Wolverine on his ass through the gate. So as soon as Wolverine goes through the gate, we hear sirens coming toward a car, and from the car there's a steady drip of blood coming underneath it. Wolverine opens the trunk of this car, out pops some severely emaciated man, and he's like, "You're like him," and Wolverine's like, "No, I'm nothing like him," and this dude just dies in Wolverine's arms as the sirens approach. Now Wolverine is judging Omega Red for killing these people and stuffing them in the trunk, and he goes back to Krakoa, and we see Dr. Reyes and Magneto presiding over Omega Red, giving him medical care. And Wolverine is trying to make the case that Omega Red shouldn't be allowed to stay there, that he's sick down to the bone. He actually calls Omega Red a grade A 100% psycho, to which Magneto responds, "Some people would say the same about both of us." And the arguments that Wolverine is making against having Omega Red stay there, they are so hypocritical. It's crazy. He's like, "Oh, there's kids on this island." This from the man who killed all his own children except for the clone one. And Magneto says if something happens to these kids, if he feeds on any of them, they'll be resurrected and he'll be punished accordingly. So Wolverine's next point is, resurrection is irrelevant. Immortality don't erase trauma. I know that better than anyone. Meanwhile, unless you're getting backed up like right before you die in the middle of all that pain, resurrection would erase the trauma of Omega Red killing some kid on the island. Not saying that that's right. I'm just saying Wolverine's logic is flawed. Like, he needs to think before he speaks, but he's not good at that. And Wolverine brings up the fact that Omega Red left behind a pimped out roadster with a trunk full of corpses. And Magneto's like, "Yeah, well, your job is to go find out what he did and clean it up." So Wolverine goes to Omega Red and condemns him for killing these people and stuffing them in his trunk. But Omega Red is like, "What if I didn't kill them? I know you wouldn't believe me, but go back and investigate and you'll see." So Wolverine goes back through the gate. He's in Paris and he investigates where these people in Omega Red came from, and he's led to a bar where this woman shoves some flowers in his face, trying to sell him said flowers, and he's like, "Fuck off," before he actually sees that it's a pretty girl. And then he's like, I'd like to buy you a drink. So she tells him that they should go to a different bar than the one he was about to walk into. And he's like, "Another time, then my business is here." And she's like, "There's not gonna be another time." Ooh, ominous. So Wolverine walks into this bar. He drinks some absinthe and he's knocked out. The absinthe was laced with a whole bunch of tranquilizers. So tranquilizers don't really keep him down for long because of his healing factor, but they kept him down long enough, and just long enough, for him to wake up tied up upside down, surrounded by vampires. So the vampires literally tap Wolverine like a keg and start pouring glasses of his blood to drink. But Wolverine pops his claws, breaks free, and then starts murdering vampires left and right. But it's not just him murdering vampires. The girl that tried to sell him flowers walks in with a sun gun. Like, she just points this gun at vampires and they just turn to ash from the light that it emits. So Wolverine asks this girl, "Who are you?" And she's just like, "I'm just a stranger that tried to sell you a flower." And Wolverine's like, "Dog roses, son?" And she's like, "Yeah, vampires hate them as much as garlic. I had to know if you were one of them." So the vampire hunter chick, she goes away. Wolverine goes back to Krakoa and he tells Omega Red, "You're trying to get me killed, sending me to that vampire place?" And Omega Red is like, "No, I was just showing you the truth. How could I murder them if they were already dead? Vampire Nation's been busy lately growing its numbers. Those people were prisoners, bitten, infected, trapped deep in the catacombs until their transition was complete." So Wolverine tells Omega Red, "Seeing as how you live off death, you might as well be a bloodsucker yourself." And Omega Red's like, "Maybe I've changed." So Wolverine is like, "Bullshit, you can't change who you are." So Omega Red throws in Wolverine's face that the only reason Omega Red needs to kill people to live is because he needed the carbonadium synthesizer to stabilize his condition, and Wolverine stole the carbonadium synthesizer. So technically, Wolverine is the person responsible for Omega Red having a need to kill in order to keep himself alive. So Wolverine's like, don't you put that on me, don't you dare. And there's an exclamation mark, so you know there was some feeling behind that. And why? Because Wolverine knows this is obviously true, but he rationalizes it as, you were a killer long before you got lab enhanced, spilling bloods as natural to you as breathing. Which, I'm not saying Omega Red isn't a psychopath or a serial killer, but I mean, he didn't need to kill to stay alive before Wolverine screwed him over by taking the carbonadium synthesizer. So even if every single person that Omega Red killed isn't Wolverine's fault entirely, there's a little bit of responsibility on Wolverine's part for it. I'm just saying. So Wolverine stops his conversation with Omega Red. He goes back to Paris and he finds this vampire hunting chick and he's like, what's your name? So she's like, Louise, you followed me this far, now follow me a little farther. Daylight is a good time to hunt. And she mentions that she's part of an ancient holy order called the Night Guard, devoted to fighting the vampire nation. Now, I've never heard of them before, but it wouldn't surprise me if they're not new, if they've already existed. I mean, I would like them to have existed already, if only just to see if the chicken Morbius was part of this group. But yeah, anyway, everyone should go read Morbius. That book is awesome. So this vampire hunting chick, Louise, she's like, it's the fault of Krakoa that the vampires are recruiting. Humankind is distracted and disempowered. So the bloodsuckers see this as an opportunity to rise up. So they go into the catacombs below Paris to hunt vampires, but they fall into a trap and they get ambushed. Louise, she gets taken hostage by the vampires, and all these vampires gang up on Wolverine and take him down. Now, after they engage in this feeding frenzy, apparently they just leave him there and leave the vampire hunting chick there. And Wolverine's like, if they were hoping I would turn and that's why they left, they're stupid, because it's not going to work. And that's been proven in previous encounters between Wolverine and vampires. Everyone should also go read Curse of the Mutants, which this story is giving me major Curse of the Mutants vibe. So, X-Men, Curse of the Mutants, it was when Cyclops had Utopia, Dracula's son staged a coup, killed Dracula, and a whole bunch of vampires invaded San Francisco to hunt all the X-Men and turn mutants into vampires. It's actually the story in which Jubilee got turned into a vampire. So vampire hunting chick is like, oh, the mutants have Charles Xavier and they're united now, but the vampires also have a leader under which they're united, and that's Dracula. Now, last I heard, Dracula was in the Avengers and he wasn't doing too well. I think he was dying. So tell me in the comments below what was going on with Dracula, because it looks to me like he infused a whole bunch of Wolverine's blood and now he's back up to full strength and walking around in the daylight. We actually see him meeting up with Omega Red, and he actually hands Omega Red the carbonadium synthesizer and he says, you will no longer need to kill to live, but maybe that won't stop you from living to kill. You should know, however, that housed inside of it is a detonator. And Omega Red's like, what does that mean? Dracula's like, it means you remain in my service. It means the vampire nation has plans. It means that the mutants will not interfere with them. So Omega Red is like, how the hell am I supposed to prevent that from happening? So Dracula's like, join them, but obey me. So now we got Omega Red on Krakoa spying and possibly sabotaging the mutants and reporting back to Dracula for some inevitable plan that Dracula has concocted. From there, we get a white page called Blood Work that's semi-interesting. It talks about Wolverine's blood and a vampire's blood and how they're extremely similar, but whereas a vampire's malignant and virulent, Wolverine's blood does not deteriorate when exposed to ultraviolet light, and its compatibility with other blood types deteriorates once it actually leaves his body. So that's how Dracula's up and about. But yeah, that was Wolverine #1. It was pretty damn good. Everyone brought their comics expertise to bear, and I can't wait to read more, even as someone who's kind of not the biggest Wolverine fan in the world, because Cyclops was right, in case you didn't know. I look forward to Wolverine being more hypocritical, being holier than thou, and being entertaining. It's always fun to make fun of him. That being said, if you enjoyed the video, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. It's all appreciated. and I will see you guys later. Bye.